We're talking about leadership for a minute before we get into vision. And let's just write these things down about leaders. Number one, right, leaders create. If you're going to be a leader, you're going to create three things in your organization. One, you're creating community. You got to have relationship. Because one thing that you'll find in any kind of leadership or any kind of organization is there are always going to be crisis now and then. And the leader of the organization will find that it's much easier to deal with crisis when you are dealing with people that you are in a relationship with. So it's very important that you understand the part that you play as a leader is you are constantly creating a community. You cannot be an island unto yourself and lead effectively any organization, whether it's the church or in the real world. You have to be somebody that's willing to step across and reach your hand out and form relationships, because you are the one responsible for the community in the organization. You also, as a leader, create culture. Culture. And that culture is displayed by the values and standards that you as a leader set for the organization. Those values and standards actually become the group's definition of what is important and what you will accept and what you will reject in your organization. As we talk about Christian leaders, of course, the goal would be that we would lead a God-filled, Bible-focused, or create a God-filled, Bible-focused culture. So you can do that in the secular world, or you can do that in the church world. You can have a God-focused, Bible-focused culture that you set. And what happens in that kind of culture is people begin to feel valued. At the same time, they are feeling challenged and they are feeling loved. And when you create that kind of culture, it'll be much more productive, as opposed to people experience a dysfunctional or a strife-filled culture. You know, you've gone to some churches where you can sense this whole, peace thing, this whole unity thing. That's a culture. That has been worked on. That has been strived for. That has been taught. That has been learned. On the other side of that is you've also been in a church where it's been filled with strife, and that has been allowed to be part of the organization. So the leader is responsible for making sure that the culture is created effectively. And who we are and how we lead will determine the culture. It's like sticking your finger in the temperature of warm water, You determine the temperature of that pot as a leader. So the culture will be the pot, the water that's in the pot, and you're the one that either turns up the heat or you have no heat whatsoever, or it's a lukewarm environment. But the leader is the one that is responsible for that. You cannot blame the employees for the culture that is created. You cannot blame the people that are following for the culture. You may not like it, but it comes back to the leader. The leader is responsible for the culture. Also, leaders create change. They'll change people, they'll change companies, they'll change systems. There's a saying that goes like this: leaders change people, or people will change. Either the people are going to get in line with what the culture or the teaching and the leaders of the teaching of the leader is, or the leader will change the people that is in the organization. But it's important that you understand that they create change. They say about managers, and managers are a good thing. No organization can exist without them. And though managers have leadership ability, managers and leaders are not necessarily the same thing. A manager is one who keeps the status quo of the organization. But the leader is the one who enhances the organization. So the manager is responsible, or will keep the status quo, keep things in line. But if there's any change that's going to go on, it always starts from the head and runs down. The leaders will enhance the organization. So leaders create. Number two, write this down. Leaders communicate. First and foremost, they communicate vision. Where the organization is going, as we will see tonight. It starts with leadership. They also communicate direction, and they communicate values. I've kind of already said some of that, so I won't stay there. Number three, leaders challenge the status quo. Leadership is always about trying to do something better. How can we be better at what we do? So they're constantly challenging the status quo. And as we've learned, there's change is really a good thing, especially in our world today where change is always happening so rapidly. Organizations have to constantly be changing. People have to constantly be changing. The leader's the one who has the pulse on that, and they're always trying to do better. They're trying to do things different. Even as it relates to preaching, from a preaching perspective, you go to some churches and you're wondering, why am I always being challenged when I walk in there? Well, I remember years ago when I was in school that one of the teachers said this. He says, the goal of preaching is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. Comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. So when we come to church, it's not always about just feeling good, and we love the beautiful sermons that we're able to hear that affirm us or confirm us, but also word that comes out of the Bible should also be challenging us. If we're too comfortable, we should feel disturbed when we get under the direction of some leaders. Number 4, leaders call for a commitment. And the commitment that they're asking for is 1, to their vision, B, to their values, and C, to their direction. It's up to the leader to call everybody in the organization to get on board to those specific 3 things. So every leader who sets out to lead without a firm commitment on the part of the followers is going to encounter problems one way or sometime or other. Because it's not always a matter of the followers. The followers never lead the organization. They can help manage the organization, but the leader is the one responsible for heading the organization in the right direction. And if there's too much pull on the part of the followers, then the leader is going to end up in trouble. There's a saying that goes like this: if you need people, you can never lead people. And that simply means that if you're too afraid, like the Bible says of Jeremiah, he was afraid in a sense to even stand up before the people. Moses was intimidated by Pharaoh, and God had to deal with that intimidation issue, because he's more or less trying to say to Moses and to all of us, listen, you can't be intimidated by people. You can't feel as though what that person is saying or is doing, their position, can ever keep you from being the mouthpiece that I'm calling you to be. If I tell you to say something, I want you to say it. If I ask you or tell you to lead the organization in this direction, you need to lead the organization in that direction. When it comes to God, He does not expect the followers to lead the leader, or else you don't have a leader. So this is very important. The leader has to recognize that everybody that is following them has to be committed, and he has to ask for their commitment to follow him. When you look at the children of Israel, remember they were complaining about being in the desert. Well, let's go back a minute. First, they complained about being in Egypt. And they cried out to God and they said, get us out of here. And then God sends them a deliverer, and they're following Moses out into the wilderness. And when they get into the wilderness, they started complaining about the wilderness and they wanted to go back into Egypt. That's because the reason that happens is because followers are always in that constant state of flux. They're needing somebody to lead them. And the leader has to get up there and demand, hey, follow this direction. Followers with their own vision will always compete with the leader's vision. Winston Churchill says it this way: when the eagles are silent, the parrots will chatter. We got to make sure that the leaders continue to give out their leadership call. Jesus, when he was dealing with his disciples, remember what he said to them? He's calling them to a high level of commitment, so much so that Peter one time turns to Jesus and says, what are you talking about, Jesus? We've left everything to follow you. And Jesus wouldn't have had it any other way. You have to be committed to following me. He said, you will be committed. I ask for your commitment. I demand your commitment. Yes, you'll leave everything to follow me. And a leader has to say to those that are following them, hey, I'm asking for your commitment to follow the vision, the values, and direction of this organization. If not, then I'm not the leader that is over you. You need to find another organization that you can feel more comfortable in. Number 5, leaders clarify. They're constantly talking about the vision. They're keeping it out there. They're putting it, whether it's in print or whether it's being stated. They're constantly clarifying those 3 things: the vision, the values and the direction of the organization. Number 6, we're running quick here because this isn't where I want to stay for too long. Leaders calculate risks and rewards, then take risks to receive rewards. This has to do with strategy again, because they are constantly looking to strategically position the organization that they're working with to grow and to increase. And good leadership isn't about avoiding all the risks. Good leadership is about taking a risk. There was a commercial years ago that in the Super Bowl, there was a commercial that advertised truck liners for bed. Well, it was a small startup company. It was owned by a family, and the family really didn't have a lot of capital backing them up. But they said, you know what, if we can just get on the Super Bowl, get in the Super Bowl to all the men, before all the men that are watching the Super Bowl, we know that they have trucks, they'll love our product. So they got on the Super Bowl, they've spent all the money, and you know that Super Bowl commercials within that 30-second time span is extremely expensive, but they put all their money on this. They were willing to take a risk. They so much believed in their product and in their organization. They so much believed in what they could do that they pulled all their money together. They borrowed money from family, borrowed money from friends to get their product advertised during the Super Bowl. And sure enough, most people who have a truck today have a truck liner in it, on their bed, a truck bed liner in it. And it all started because a few guys were willing to take a risk and step out of their comfort zone. And it was a calculated risk, and it paid huge dividends. And you all have heard that little saying about the turtle, that the turtle will never get anywhere unless he sticks his neck out. So leadership is about taking those kind of risks. And then we end with this one. Leaders construct teams. Leaders construct teams. Just from a church's perspective, church has changed so much. Church leadership has changed so much over the last 20 years that it's really hard to recognize some of the old ways of doing things anymore. Like, my dad was raised in an era where he thought nothing of it, and he still does it to this day as a pastor. He'll get up there and he'll try to do almost everything himself. If he gets up and he wants to sing a song, now he's not a singer, but if he wants to sing a song, he'll just tell the team, just follow me on this. And nobody has practiced. Nobody on this team even knows the song, but they say, just follow me on this. And so he'll get up there and he'll be like the chief cook and bottle washer and all that kind of stuff together. He'll get ready to preach his sermon, but he'll go ahead and sing a little bit. And my uncle's like that in his church. He'll do praise and worship. My uncle will lead the praise and worship. And then after he leads praise and worship, he'll take the offering. And then after he takes the offering, he'll preach. It's the same voice for 2 hours, an hour and a half. That has changed, but yet that's where church used to be. It used to be that it was like a one-man show, but that has changed over the years. And my dad says to me on occasion, Steve, it is so much easier to build a church today. And I have to look at him and say, you know what, Dad? It's not necessarily easier, it's just different. Your challenges were much different than the challenges that we face today. Because the challenges we face today is this one right here of team building. We can't just depend on ourselves to really build and bless the people that we feel God's called us to bless. Now pastors are like CEOs and CFOs and all of that combined, where not only do you get the training and theology, but you also need to have some more counseling in your DNA. And you need to know a little bit more about finances. And you need to know those kind of things to help you build a staff. They don't teach you how to build staff when you go to college, in school, for a Christian school, and preparing you for the ministry. They don't teach you that kind of stuff. But yet that's what's needed today to help build successful ministries. So from that standpoint in itself, leaders have to always focus on teams. It is about building teams and then trusting the people that you are building into. What is our aim all about? It's helping us build a bigger team to try to touch more and more people in the body of Christ. And for those of you who really feel like God's called you to use your gift and talent right here in this ministry, it's about you being part of the team, us investing, us changing up our Wednesday evening format, where we said we're going to make some changes last year. We could go on and just do the regular church service on Wednesday, Wednesday. We can have the same service in a sense with a different word that we had on the weekend. But come on, why don't we change it up a little bit? Let's go ahead, instead of putting the students into a 3-class, maybe 4-hour classroom environment on Monday night, like they do at other local schools here that have schools on Monday night for their ministry. Instead of doing that, let's change it up a little bit. If we're going to build ministry teams in our church and build up people, we need to adjust and adapt and try things. We did it just with Celebrate Recovery and one of the programs that we had, where everything on Friday night was all packed into CR and Project Life. But one of the great programs that Project Life offers is a step study. And so when we were talking to Jeff and Gloria about what we were going to do coming into the year with CR, we said, why don't we try a different format? Instead of doing it on Wednesday night, where people are in a sense coming and having to mix their stuff that's going on with their CR, instead of doing it here while the rest of the people are around, let's try it on a different night. Because we also want our leaders being taught leadership training. Let's do it on Tuesday night. Mary and I came by last night. I could not believe it. I was blown away. I opened the door next door, mistakenly just opened the door. It was so quiet. I'm thinking, is there kids in here? Are they hiding? I don't want any kids hiding, because there's little kids running around. So I opened the door and there was the room full of men. I'm like, wow, change is good. Taking a risk, trying something out is good. And that's what's excellent about leadership. And you have to depend on the teams that you're raising up. This is all about raising up teams. So if Jesus depended on a team of 12 to help him in his environment, how much more do we as leaders? So that's just some stuff. Please listen and learn every single one of those lessons. Every one of that right there, you're going to see again. You definitely need it. Now, let's talk about vision. Let's talk about views on vision. Can you help me out again, Armando? Views on vision. And let's do it this way. Instead of Christian leaders, let's call it Christian organizations for a little bit, if you will. Christian organizations, and we'll list 5 of them, okay? We'll list 5 of them. Christian companies or Christian organizations out there. Think about some of them, and let's write 5 of them down right now. First, what Christian organization comes to your mind? Perfect. Walmart. Is Walmart Christian? Mr. Sam, what's his name? Sam Walmart. Okay. Chick-fil-A. Family. Family bookstore. TBN. Cool. Amway's a Christian organization?
At the top of this.
Okay. Okay, there you go. Those are Christian organizations. Every one of these Christian organizations have had to develop a vision for their success. Now let's look at some of the secular organizations. Just right quick. AT&T. AT&T, Target. Apple. Good. Who else? Okay. Who else? Disney, good. Disney. Okay. Disney. Perfect. All right, so keep in mind, the difference here is going to be this. Both of these, and the Christian organization and the secular organization, all of these, have a vision. Somebody had to sit down and create a strategic vision that allows them to be successful. It doesn't change whether it's a Christian organization or whether it is a secular organization. In order to arrive at a certain destination, every organization, and we could say of every person needs to know what that destination looks like. And that destination is what we'll call our vision for tonight. So let's jump into this thing real quick. Like defining vision, what is it? A guy came to our church actually a few years ago, and he actually had a good small definition for vision, and I think it's one we're going to see again. And here's what it is. Carl F. George, you remember him? Carl George, when he came? Here's his definition. Vision is the grasping of a preferred future. It's the grasping of a preferred future. There's a couple other, let me just read them. They're not in your notes, but Kuz and Posner, they're the authors of a book called The Leadership Challenge. They say a vision is this. It's an image, a picture of what could be. An image and a picture of what could be. Aubrey Malfers, he's the author of A New Kind of Church. The definition they have is this: a clear, challenging picture of the future of a ministry as its leadership believes it can and must be. Then the authors of Transitional Leadership, Benison Nanis, says this about vision: a clearly articulated vision of the future that is at once simple, easily understood, clearly desirable, and energizing. We are on the path, before we end our class, of each one of you writing for yourself your own personal vision statement. What you want yourself to look like, why you feel you are here, what your life will eventually be. And that's important. So some of the things you're going to hear tonight will help you do and write that particular vision, as we'll make that your end of the class assignment. George Barna, he's got another definition that we're going to use for the sake of our class. And he's kind of like the George Gallup of Christianity. I remember years and years ago, he wrote a book that talked about the frog in the kettle. And that book I read like in 1980 something. And he was talking about the changes that would come to the church even before in the 80s. You know, we weren't even thinking about the year 2000 and the new millennium. But yet he defined at that point some of the changes that would take place in the church prior to the new millennium. And it's amazing that the things that he talked about way back then in that book, The Frog in the Kettle, have actually taken place. Amazing that he had the foresight and the vision to be able to see into the future. So I trust his understanding or definition of vision. And he says this: vision for ministry is a clear mental image of a preferable future imparted by God to his chosen servants, and is based upon an accurate understanding of God, self, and circumstances. From a theological standpoint, let's call a vision this: vision is born when the burning desire to be used of God encounters the living God. It comes from revelation or a burning bush experience. Think of the writer in the Bible who says of the Word of God, it is like fire caught up in my bones. That's what a godly vision will be to us. It'll be a revelatory experience where we heard God, we sensed God, we felt God, and it's as though that vision, once we grab hold of it, is like a fire that is caught up in our bones. It just causes us to stay on cue and stay aggressive and keep focusing and striving and trying to be or perform at a certain level because of that vision that God has birthed on the inside of us. We see it taking place over in Acts chapter 13. Very interesting. Acts chapter 13. Says in verses 2, it says, as they ministered to the Lord and fasted, the Holy Ghost said, separate me Barnabas and Saul for the work whereunto I have called them. And when they had fasted and prayed and laid their hands on them, they sent them away. That's the kind of vision that we're talking about. When you're having this encounter with God, and in that encounter, God begins to birth into you what that vision would be. And for these two individuals, Barnabas and Saul, they could not stay. They couldn't remain with the rest of the crew because God was calling them out to a bigger work or a better work or a different work. And as a result of that, that vision that God was starting to stir up within them caused them to move on from the crowd. Well, let's talk about some of the components here of Barna's definition of leadership as he described it. First is this: vision must have clarity. Must have clarity. No vision can be brought into being without a leader first seeing that vision in their mind. They see it, they can articulate it, they understand it. Because if a leader does not have a grasp on his or her own vision, then they won't be able to cast that vision out for others. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 8, it says, "For if the trumpet gives an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself for battle?" So the vision that we feel we are stirring up and writing for our life, that vision is our bugle call to battle. Thus, it needs to be consistently clear. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2, it says that we are to write the vision down, and then it says, make it plain, make it clear. It has to be clear so that it can be articulated. Then, number two, vision must have preferability. Preferability. We said this before, that a leader's job is to take the organization to a better place and not just keep the status quo. It has to be sharp. It has to be different. And therefore, as the organization looks at it, they're willing to say, I prefer this vision. I prefer this picture over where we are at. Because anytime an organization begins to move towards a vision, it always requires change. It always requires being uncomfortable. And the organization has to say, you know what? It's good enough for us to be uncomfortable. That's what we experienced when we moved from the old building into this building. It was very uncomfortable. And people want to say all the time, well, you know, Destiny just had this building in your future. Yeah, it did have this building in our future. But our church had to be willing to stay focused on the vision and say, I will sacrifice towards that. And folks, there was a lot of money taken up and given by this church to give us what we are able to enjoy today. It wasn't a simple skip in the park. It took some people saying, you know what? We prefer the big building and being uncomfortable to move into that over where we were in that little 8,000 square feet of buildings. And I don't know about you, but some of you Latinos out there, I don't know if you understand what the real meaning of status quo is in the Latin. The status quo in the Latin actually means the mess that we're in right now. Number three, vision must have a future focus. Cute little vision proverb says this: it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark, but he did see a boat. He did know that the thing that he was building had to float, had to be waterproof, had to carry a whole bunch of animals in his family. Vision will do that for us. That's the kind of vision we're speaking about. It's looking toward tomorrow. You know, there's reporters and then there's forecasters in the news. You know, you got people who report the news, and then you have the weatherman that comes on, or the weather person, and they forecast what the weather is going to be. That's what a vision is about. It takes on our part, not to just reporters, because anybody can look around and you know, call what is happening what it is. You know, anybody can do that. Listen, we may not agree with the guy that's in the White House now, but anybody can get there and continue to complain about the person in the White House. It takes vision. It takes a forecaster. It takes somebody that says, hey, God, what are you saying about our country? What are you saying about this financial climate that we're in right now? Anybody can complain about it. Anybody can moan about it. Anybody can, they think it should have been done a different way. It's easy to be an armchair quarterback. It's easy, what do they tell us, the 2020, hindsight's 2020, vision. We could all say those things as we go forward, but it really does take a visionary leader to be able to say, wait a minute, I see where we're at today, but I know something's coming tomorrow. Let me prepare my organization. Let me prepare my life. Let me prepare my family for that. So visionaries are those who forecast future events in the lives of those who are following, and a vision keeps us looking at where we are going. Again, the authors of the book, The Leadership Challenge, Coos and Posner, they says this: the future can't be predicted. It must be imagined. That's what vision does for us. It's the leader's challenge then to look into the future, interrogate it so that the organization can be brought into that future as best as they possibly can. Number 4, vision comes from God. Vision comes from God. As a Christian leader, we have to be obedient to the vision that comes from God for our own lives and for the organizations that we are serving in. And the question would be, how do I know if it's a God-ordained vision? Paul Youngie Cho, his name now is David Youngie Cho. He has over 1 million people in his church in Seoul, Korea. And many years ago, Mary and I went to Seoul, Korea with her mother, and we met Pastor Cho, who's about this tall, but yet he's extremely powerful. He said this about having to know whether your vision is from God or not. He says, if your vision doesn't scare you a bit, chances are it's not a vision from God. Because God's vision always requires faith to succeed, trust to follow the instincts of it, and miracles to be able to walk into it. So it's not always easy. It's always a risk. But that's why leaders are called leaders. There's a reason you're a leader. It's because you're willing to take that risk. You know it's a vision from God. Number 5, God imparts his vision to a person of his choosing. And I hope you understand that as it relates to any organization, in order for the organization to be successful, Christian or secular, there's always the lead that gets the word and runs with the word. From a church perspective, when God was dealing with the children of Israel to get Israel out of their mess, God didn't give a word to the elders of Israel at that time. They were in shambles. They didn't have any elders. God gave a word to a man of God, Moses. And God used Moses to lead the Israelites out. And that's how God leads organizations. He works with a point man. And in working with the point man, he speaks to the point man. And the point man takes the directives from God. He always works with people of his vision. In John 15:16, Jesus says this: you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you. And that word ordained means planted you. I planted you where you are at. You haven't chosen me. I planted you. I ordained you so that you would go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. You know, when you're flowing in a vision that you know God has poured into you, you understand the value right here of this phrase, where you know that whatever your vision is requiring, you go to the one who gave you that vision. He's responsible for providing what the vision needs to follow through. Whether it's money, whatever the resource of people may be, God is the one who's doing that when you're operating in a God-ordained vision. That's why Jesus is so blunt here, saying, hey man, you ask the Father for whatever you need and you'll have it. Why? Because if you're planted, if he's chosen you, you don't have a problem. Now, if you're self-appointed, you've got problems. If man's appointed you, you've got problems. If mom or dad called you into the thing, then you've got issues. Because that doesn't mean God called you. And therefore, the person who called you is the one who's responsible for providing for you. So the goal would be to make sure that whatever I am in, if it's God who's put me here, then I need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt it is God. And here's why you will find people that are chosen of God. 99% of the people who are chosen by God to take the lead don't want it. They don't want it. God has to convince them beyond a shadow of a doubt. And most of the time when they step into it real tentatively. They step into it nervous. They step into it insecure. Look at Moses. Moses says, I can't even talk. God says, no problem, Moses. I got your brother. He got your back. You tell him what I'm telling you to tell the people and let him talk for you. That's how it happens. You don't want to step into this thing. This goes beyond just a salvation verse. This verse of John 15 actually has to do with serving and bringing forth fruit in our own life's calling. So if you're not happy with your success, then really talk to the Lord of the vineyard. He's responsible. And as long as you stay connected with the Lord of the vineyard, he says you will bring forth fruit. And we should be bringing forth fruit. And guys, any God-ordained vision should constantly be growing. Growing. I can't answer for all the, can somebody close that door for me back there? I can't answer for all the people who say they're called of God to step into something. But if the thing they've stepped into is not growing, then I personally don't believe that it's a God-ordained vision. Because a God-ordained vision, as it says right here, you will go forth and you will bring forth fruit. And the organization should be producing fruit, not fruit that's dying on the vine, fruit that is fruitful. It's productive. Number 6, we need to know that God has called us to a task. We need to know that it was God who called us into this vision and not some other voice. And sadly, most leaders will never really know if they are called by God until it's too late, because the caller is revealed when you go through difficult times. The one who's called you is revealed when you go through difficult times. It's not when everything's going well. It's not the first year that you start the business that you find these difficult times necessarily, because that's the honeymoon period, you know? And everybody's got a honeymoon period, and whether it's in a church or whether it's in any organization that you work with, there's always going to be a honeymoon period. But when the honeymoon period is over, then you find out if you're really called or not. Because those that are called by man will give up and quit. But those who are called by God don't have any options. You don't have an option. You'll be miserable staying in it, and you'll be much more miserable if you try to get out of it. Because the growing in that case has to start in you as a leader. And you have to learn to grow and maintain and continue doing the work God's called you to do, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's uncomfortable. John 10 through 15. And this is what we started our church with here in verse 10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But listen what Jesus says. I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay my life down for the sheep. So what Jesus is telling us there, right there, is it's when you're going through a difficult time that the true shepherd really is exposed. Because the hireling, the person that's just been put there by man to collect a salary and do a job, when the pressure comes and the wolf comes around, he's headed to take care of himself. But a shepherd says, I'm in this for the long haul, and I lay my life down for the sheep. And I have a relationship with the sheep where they know me and I know them. But that's when true calling is manifested. It's when you go through difficult times. That's when you really find what your relationship is like with the sheep. Have you noticed that no one has ever written a book called Great Fence Sitters Who Change the World? You notice that? It's not out there, great fence sitters who changed the world. It's not there because you cannot be a fence sitter and change anything. It comes getting off of that fence and taking a stand, either one way or the other, and take a stand. And that's exactly what Moses did as he stood before Pharaoh. He had to know that he knew that he was standing there before the man that could take his life out. He had to know that God had put him there, or he would have never stepped up before the Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt. And nothing big for God was ever established without courage and sacrifice. And you won't make the sacrifice or muster up the courage without knowing that you know that God has called you to the vision. That's why even working for this ministry here at our church, it's not easy working in our office. It's not easy working in the ministry. Because you may not understand this or believe this, but we don't pray all day with each other. We really don't. And we don't read the Bible to each other all day. And we don't teach each other the greatest revelation that God has given to us. Not in the slightest. It's not always a happy place to work. It's a place where our loyalty to one each other is tested. And at the same time, we know that the reason we are doing what we're doing today in the ministry and putting up with the stuff that we put up with, even putting up with each other in times when we're not, at our best point. The reason we're able to do that is because ultimately everybody that is working in the place today knows that they are there because God has called them to do a certain task. And they're not called by Alessis, they're called by God to do a certain task. And they've proven that time and time again. And you need to be praying for this guy because on Monday he has his first day on the job with us as he turns 40 years old. What a great way to start the second half of his life. And hopefully he'll be around for a long time. Anyhow, long run. Let me show you some vision illustration. Walt Disney. They tell us that soon after Disney World was completed in Orlando, someone was kind of sighing and lamenting that Walt never saw the place. And they kind of said, isn't it too bad that Walt had died and never lived to see this? To which a gentleman by the name of Mike Vance, who was the creative director of Disney, replied, he did see it, and that's why we're here. That's what vision is about. The vision saw it, and the people jumped on board, and now look what it's done to an entire city, an entire state. President John F. Kennedy, he articulated a vision that had been emerging for a couple of years, and that vision was to have a man on the moon by the end of the decade. That vision in itself sparked us into the space race. It unified a number of previously competing agencies like the Air Force and NASA, and it tapped into the burning heart of all Americans who wanted to see America get to the moon before the Russians did. And sure enough, America did that. But it started with a vision that had the whole country getting behind it. That's what we're talking about with visionaries. So it's important that we understand that. Letter C, a necessary element every good vision must have. It is this, buy-in. Buy-in. You have to have the buy-in from the followers. From the followers. I know we're speeding along real quick here, and hopefully you don't have any questions. If you do, just write them aside, and we'll try to tackle them at the end. But this is pretty powerful. You'll see this on a test right here about the buy-in. Because the vision of the leader of any organization isn't really good unless you have followers that are willing to make that vision part of their life, part of their routine. Because everybody in the organization is going to have to sacrifice. The vision requires sacrificing on everybody's part. In here, when we get up to take a tithes and our offerings, we're asking people to make a sacrifice. And that sacrifice for them is a financial sacrifice. And it takes some real spiritual chutzpah to be able to look sometimes at the congregation when we know that we are in a financial challenge in our country and say to the congregation, folks, we got to keep giving. Every week, we got to keep giving. We hold up those tithes and those offering envelopes, and we speak over those envelopes because we need to keep giving. If we're going to do the things that we need to do as a church and keep growing, I mean, the Bible says the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. The economy should not stop the growing impact of the church in this country. And just because financially we may be going through a difficult time as a country, spiritually we should be at an all-time high because people are finally getting their money off of their wallet and their pocketbook and their status symbols, and they're putting their eyes finally on the one that can truly help them, which is God. And if the church is not at a place to be there, sounding the call, letting them hear that we're doing things, that they can walk into these doors and find the help that they need, if the church isn't doing that because of money, because the leader is afraid to get up and say to the people, folks, we need to keep giving to try to get the people to buy into the vision, then what will happen with the church during this real challenging time? Folks, it requires a buy-in, because without the buy-in on the part of the followers, our vision is nothing more than a daydream. It's just a daydream. But the buy-in is bringing our followers around to our way of thinking, seeing, leading, so that they can follow. So a vision is only a vision if it can be believed in, for only then can it empower people to shape their future and meet the need of the burning heart on the inside of one who gets passionate about that vision, and in turn, they make that vision the mission of their life. And we see people here in this house doing that very thing. Seeing them give up and their Saturdays, give up their nights to come and learn, and see them use their weekends to help pour into others and use their gifts and talents to come in midweek and practice in music. And what you're seeing is the buy-in, people saying, yes, I believe in the vision. And without that buy-in, we really do not have a vision. Because the buy-in occurs when you attack the heart. And thus, when we think of visioning in itself isn't about troubleshooting. It's not just talking about how we're going to resolve something, but it's tapping the heart. It's heart tapping, not troubleshooting. It's tapping the heart of their followers. It's not about our present day problems, but it's about our future. It's not a remedy. It's about God's leading. What is God saying to his people today? What is God saying to you about your company today? How you will make an impact, how you will make a difference. Because every business leader that is a believer, they got to know that my business, what I'm doing every week, every day with my employees, I'm doing this, and it's bigger than just this product that I produce. If it's just about a product that you produce, then you can get burned out, you can get overwhelmed. But when you know what your product that you're producing is giving back to you, so in turn you become effective in the kingdom of God by using what you have as gifts and talents and your resource of money, knowing that what you are producing is affecting the kingdom of God. That is a vision that is tapped into the heart of that individual. Peter Senge, the MIT-based author, he's a researcher and an educator. He says this observation about vision. He says, vision is not something that gets imposed on a group of people by a manipulative or well-meaning person out for his own or the group's enhancement. He's talking there about vision not just being about the leader. And though the leader needs to have the vision, if the vision is only about the leader, then it's not really a vision. He's saying it's about the followers. It's about getting the followers wanting to comply with the vision so that it is inherently exhilarating and it's driving the individuals to a worthy commitment on the part of the followers. They have to take hold of it. It becomes their vision. It becomes their words. It becomes their thoughts. It's what they're willing to give their lives to. That's real vision. Anybody can put up a slogan. Anybody can create a logo, and that's going to be your product slogan. But unless people buy into it, it has no long-lasting effect. It goes beyond just filling a need, and it becomes the very existence for the group and the essence of the group's purpose, which then defines the daily work and the direction of the group. Therefore, a vision requires on the part of its followers commitment and not compliance. It's about commitment. Compliance cannot generate any kind of passion or excitement, but a vision that taps the human heart can. On the heels of that, we need to understand this. Number one, a vision can die, can be weakened, competed with, and resisted due to its difficulty. So it's not just about me taking what I think is good for this organization and force feeding it to people. You know, we live in a culture down in South Florida that most intelligent people, they just don't like anything to be forced down their throat. I just believe that the follower has a good mindset. They're pretty brilliant. They're pretty smart. And so you just can't force everybody to comply with a particular vision or understanding. And as a leader, I don't believe in that. I don't believe you force people to do anything. You set a standard for people, and you pray that they will adhere to the standard. It becomes a matter of the heart. So let me show you how that looks. Can you hear that? From this perspective, you know, you always have the visionary. You always have the leader. And where the leader sets is reality. This is you every day. This is what you're doing as a leader. It's reality. Over here is our vision. And in a sense, we have this rubber band around us that's pulling us towards our vision. So you make decisions based on your vision. You staff based on your vision. You lead based on your vision. And you need that if you're going to be a leader. You have to have the vision. At the same time, though, is the real world. And just like you are being pulled in the direction of your vision, you're also being pulled in the direction of the real world. So there is this constant tension going on in the leader, where on one side he has the vision that he desires, that he feels like God has given him, but on the other side is the real world where you live. You know, in this world over here of vision, you know, it could be, you know, a $20 million project. But then you come back over here to the real world, and all you have is $100,000. And so you want to get the organization over here to the vision, but yet you also have to come back to the real world and realize that I'm only dealing with $100,000. It could be 100 employees that are going to help you in the vision, but yet you presently only have 5 employees. And so you have to constantly weigh the tension, feel the tension between following the vision that you have out there that God has given you, but yet you also look back to the reality of where you're at. And leadership requires that I make decisions every day with both in mind. That you've seen some people, all they want to do is live over here. It's, you know, their dream world, they're dreamers. And they live over here where the vision's at, and all they do is talk about the dream and the dream and the dream, and everything's about the dream. And every time you talk to them, it's a new dream. It's another part of the vision. And you're like, all right, well, that's great. But then you come back over here and you're like, what are you doing today to help you get over there? Because this is what you've got to work with. You can't work over here on a $20 million project if all you've got is $100,000 over here. Then at the same time, There's another tension point because you've got other people, some that are dreamers and some that really are just, what do you call it when they get on, squatters, They're squatters and it's like all they do is sit and a vision is something that they can talk about, but they never do anything to pursue that vision. They don't even, all it is just a slogan to them. And you've got this tension constantly going on. And if you're not careful and you don't properly balance out this tension point, your vision can die. Your vision can die. On the other side to that is this. If all you're doing is you're looking at vision all the time and dreaming about over here and you're living over here, if you're not careful, you'll destroy what is the real world. You'll lose what you have built. So both from a leadership perspective has to be balanced out. For an example, we talk about this with when we first started our church. When you start a church, all you have is a vision. You don't have resources. You don't really have people, which if you don't have people, you don't have money. If you don't have money, you don't have a building. So a company will do this. In the secular world, a company will say, all right, I'll go out. I have a vision. I have a business plan. I'm going to take my business plan over to some investors and I'm going to get some money. So I have my vision. And I'm going to take my vision, put it in writing. I'm going to bring it to some money people. I'm going to get my money. Then I'm going to go out there. I'm going to get a building. Then after I get a building, I'm going to get employees. And then I'm going to start generating money. So in business, that's how that works. But when it comes to the Christian end of it, when it comes to building a church, you have vision, but you don't have money. And you don't have people to get more money so that you can get a building. So what you have to do is this, from a church perspective, you've got a vision, and then you got to get a building. And then you start with the group of people that you have, but it's never enough money to do what you feel like your vision's calling you to do. So you got to, but you do it backwards. It's like, okay, I got a vision, but now I got to get the building, then I'll get the people, and then I'll get the money. And if you're not careful, if all you're doing is staying focused over here on the big vision, because I'm a dreamer, I'm a visionary, I'm always going to be starting something new. If you're not careful, you'll never take care of this base over here where you're really at. You'll never have the resources for it. You'll burn out as a leader. You won't be able to lead the organization and the people that are follow you. You'll never be able to lead them effectively. And it ends up 2 to 3 to 4 years down the road with nothing. There's those tension points that we constantly have to navigate through. And just because one has a vision doesn't guarantee that the vision will come to pass, as there's a fine line that we walk between our vision and our real world or the reality. I think I put this in your notes somewhere about Michelangelo. He makes this statement. He says, I saw the angel in the marble and I chiseled until I set it free. My question to you would be as a leader, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in your life? What are you seeing in your career? What are you seeing in your marriage? What are you seeing in your company? What are you seeing in the ministry? What are you seeing in your health? What do you see in the marble of your life? And whatever it is that you see as a leader requires a lot of chiseling in order for it to be set free. So a vision can die, be weakened, competed with, and resisted due to its difficulty. Because this is not easy. This is a challenge. Number 2, in order to keep vision alive, it must be tied to reality. And you'll see that on a test. That means we have to overcome real world problems and overcome the hindrances that stand in the way of our vision, or else it'll never come to pass. A vision is not always that easy. It just doesn't come. I'm telling you. It's never in the form that we want it. We got to hustle. Number 2, Roman numeral 2, detecting vision, what it does. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Rick Warren says it this way, actually, where there is no vision, the people leave the church for another parish. The people of our organization need to know where we're trying to take them. In our book, Major General Perry Smith says this, leaders do not really serve the long-term interests of their institution unless they plan, set goals, and provide a strategic vision. So letter A, vision is not vital. Vision is vital not because of what it is, but because of what it does. So quickly, let's read through what vision does. There's 7 things here that I'll ask you to remember because you'll see them again in a test. Vision, number 1, provides direction and purpose to followers who previously may have had none and allows for their participation in the work of the group. I'm just reading them. Number 2, it kind of summarizes things we've already stated. Vision unifies individuals into a community around the purposes and values of the organization and coordinates their individual efforts around a single goal. Vision, number 3, calls for commitment and dedication from the followers and weeds out the casual and half-hearted. Number 4, vision creates enthusiasm, energy, momentum in followers for the implementation of the vision. Number 5, vision is the central force that simultaneously attracts followers to and keeps them involved in the work of the organization. Number 6, vision defines and differentiates the organization from all others. And then number 7, vision inspires and otherwise calls men and women to attempt to do great works in the building the kingdom of God. We're almost done. Number 3, Roman numeral 3, developing vision, what it takes. Things that you should now think about as you start planning your own vision statement that you will be writing. But if you recall, when we gave out to you the syllabus, we mentioned to you about your personal vision tool. This is the end of the class assignment, but I just want you to stay aware of it. And there's some tools and website that we mentioned there that you can go to get some information on helping you draw up that 40 to 50 word personal mission or vision statement. But remember these things as you start to pray and ask God about your own personal vision statement, because you need to tap in to what God is saying. So remember these. Ready? The first thing we need to do, letter A, as a Christian leader, is to seek God for our vision. Seek God for our vision. Hebrews tells us that God rewards those who diligently seek Him. And the key would be diligently seek Him. And that seeking must be done in a disciplined manner. It must be done in a consistent fashion. What we have been doing recently with our fasting, and we're only a few days away from the end of our fast. How many are pretty excited about that? Eating some chicken, right? That's going to do good. I just want some good pasta. I'm really excited about it. But as we, in the middle of this fast, part of our prayer should be in this seeking God. Father, what is the vision, your vision that you have for me? Stephen Covey, you've heard of him. He's a good leadership writer. He actually told people, this is the way that you figure out what your life vision would be about. He says, why don't you start by planning your funeral? And then he got some some people criticized him for doing that and said, man, that's kind of raw. He says, okay, then why don't you plan on your retirement? He says, what would you want them to say about you at your retirement? What people would you want attending your retirement party? What we need to be looking at our vision from that standpoint and say, God, what is it that I'm called to do? What do I want people to say about me when my days are over? And that should help you define your vision. Letter B, determine or take stock of your context and your resources. What we mean there by that is figure who you are, where you are at in your life, be real about those things. Know what your spiritual gifts are. Some of you have already gone through the life languages class, the godly communication, where you learn what your language is that you speak, your personality traits, your natural talents. All of those things should weigh into what your ultimate vision for life should be. Then C, test drive your vision. Talk about it with friends and family. And then after you tell them about it, honestly, look them in the eyes and watch their response. See what they say about your personal vision statement. Everybody in the class is going to get up and read their personal vision statement before we leave. If you're ashamed of it, then how will anybody else follow it? So don't be ashamed of it. Talk to people about it. Get it out there on the real road of life. These are people who know you and they love you, and most of the time they'll be truthful to you in return. See, I've seen too many people, and this is a real flaw in people's leadership skills, okay? It's a real flaw to run away from truth. Because you will always find people to agree with you. You'll always find people to agree with you. And I find that very difficult. I'm very suspicious of people who always have new friends. Because my question is, how come you can't stay in a relationship too long? I'm not talking about love relationship. I'm just talking about friends. How come friends don't want to hang with you? Why do you have a new best friend every year? Why do you have a new following? Why are you always starting something new? What about maintaining what you have? And some will be so, they're afraid to share their vision with others because they're afraid of what people may think. Good. You should be afraid, because if people think it's odd, it may not be the right vision for you. The Bible says, like a brother, a real brother is one who, it's like iron sharpens iron, man. People are good to help keep our feet on the ground. They really are. So this is good. So you just can't run around trying to get confirmation from everything. The Bible says even the word needs to be confirmed in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Even the Bible has to state it 2 or 3 times, the same thing, to confirm it. You should be getting the confirmation of 2 or 3 witnesses. If you can't get the confirmation of 2 or 3 witnesses about your own personal vision statement for your life, where you're going, what you want to have, your future, you better step back and really question what that thing is. Because your vision ultimately should excite some people around you. The people that love you and care for you the most, it should excite them. They should be able to finally look at you. You know what, man? You're finally on the road to somewhere. Letter D, distill your vision to its bare essentials, meaning break it down and make it simple to communicate. We're saying you need to break it down into 40 to 50 words. 40 to 50 words. We used to have this long church mission statement, prospering in God, planted in this, and it was like 5 or 6 different little statements, Yeah, it was like a song, one of Mary's songs. And I was so proud that when we started the church, that was my thing. I came up with it. Because like most pastors, when you're starting new, you go on the website and you copy everybody and anybody's stuff that's doing anything. And so we're out there. I was out there and I created this thing. We put it up in the lobby. It was our mission statement over at the other church, And I wish planted in God, prospering in family, something in destiny, the good life, living the good life, the abundant life. And it was like, all that was cool. But nobody's ever really talking about it, You never heard people saying anything about it. Now, we were in the spirit of it because that's what we were, and it came out of our spirit, but it was so long that, people just couldn't remember it. They had a hard enough time just remembering each other's names, let alone the mission statement up on the wall. So we got together one year and we said, you know what, we're going to break this thing down. And we did it. We went over to Doral. We spent the money on a room over Doral, and we locked ourselves into the room, and we had a whiteboard, or actually it was a big flip chart, because we kept writing things on it. Then we'd flip the page and we'd go and we'd keep doing this thing. And we were looking to really state who we were as a church. And what we needed to do at that point was break all that stuff down, and we were able to do it. So that's so important that you're able to do the very same thing. Letter E, describe your vision by using powerful language. Again, as you're thinking about your vision statement, pull out a thesaurus and try to use words that get people's attention. Response comes from thought-provoking words. And then letter F, depict your vision with stories that illustrate and motivate people. Meaning, really, you should have a story behind why you are here. Something has happened somewhere to mold you, to make you who you are, and make you love certain things that like the woman who, with MADD, M-A-D-D, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. You know, something happened in her life that now MADD is her deal. And she's not mad, but she created Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. And that story is what gives her her drive, her vision for the rest of her life. And then G, evaluate for excellence. Just check your vision out and make sure it's the best it can be. You've got another 7 weeks to get that thing finished. And I promise you it'll be the easiest assignment you ever undertake, but it will be the most blessed assignment, the most blessed piece of work you ever have for yourself. And I know you'll like that.